What is up, everybody? This is Alex from HETV. Today I'm talking about Euphoria Season 3. The show ended and no one really seems to be talking about it, even though it looks like a lot of people watched it. And honestly, this is one of the strangest seasons of television I've ever seen. Like, it's so bizarre that it almost feels like a different show entirely. Outside of a couple characters, most people feel like completely different, with the first point being that, of course, there's a huge time jump, which the first couple seasons didn't have. They were both in the high school setting, and now it's shifted into being a crime western, if anything. They kind of skipped over the idea of college, or I guess there is such a time jump between season 2 ended in early 2022, and this started in April 2026, so I wasn't really into the second season. There was one standout episode that I remember being really great, just kind of like an action chase episode, but I kind of all along felt like this would have been better as a one and done, just have that first season and leave it at that. Or if we're gonna do it this way, the amount of kind of fluff and filler and overall lack of focus of the season, I feel like honestly could have been condensed into a 2-hour movie, kind of like El Camino for Breaking Bad, just to round off a single character, that being Rue, who I think is the heart of the show, the best aspect of the show to me. Like, it is her show, and I would have been down for that. And it's not a net loss, which is so weird about it. If this was released in a vacuum, there would be some stuff to like about this. Like, first and foremost, it is gorgeous. It's shot on a film and there's a bunch of location photography and it looks incredible. It's just a shame what it's in service of is that fucking Sam Levinson scatterbrain, edgy for edgy's sake, sensationalist, writer's barely disguised fetish style of writing. So while Rue is definitely my favorite part of it, it quickly gets confused when she gets involved in this crime gang, and kind of like Breaking Bad becomes about like a neo-Nazi war with this drug dealer. It's insane. I will be talking spoilers for anything I can remember about season 1 and 2, and obviously season 3, so you have been warned. There was a moment in that last episode where it turns into a shootout with 2 of the oldest characters in the show who have very little to do with the original setting, and it just feels like, what is this? Parts of it are entertaining, if I'm being honest. The wedding episode in particular I thought was probably the best episode. So while I think Rue is the best character, I think the actual best performance was Sydney Sweeney. She really gives it her all. It's just a shame the character is fairly two-dimensional. And her having to play off Jacob Elordi, who I don't remember him being like incredible or anything in the first or second season, but he's noticeably bad here. He's giving off the vibe that he doesn't want to be there and that he's too big and famous for something like this at this point. Because Sydney Sweeney could say the same, but she's still committing to it and giving it her all. And her character actually has to portray a lot of range. You see her elated, you see her scared, upset, and even her storyline winds up being about crime, because of Jacob Elordi's character, who at this point is like a property developer in California, which is notoriously difficult, and his development is held back by some rare flower being on this patch of land. So people who lent money to him want the money back, and he kind of just feels siloed off for most of the season. He barely interacts with any of the major cast, and is kind of put through the ringer in a way that isn't particularly satisfying or clever. But it feels like it's presenting itself as if it is clever, with all this obnoxious, on-the-nose symbolism, Christian symbolism, which is fine. On paper, I think the idea of Rue, whose through line as an addict has been trying to do something about that, or has such a stranglehold over her life, her turning to religion in some way, as a lot of addicts do, makes sense to me. It's just a shame it's wrapped up in this cartoonish framing with the crime gang stuff, because I feel like there's enough to do there, enough to explore there, without it having to get so sensationalized and kind of undercut the dramatic weight of the character, because that's really what I loved about her, and I love about protagonists like in Mr. Robot or whatever, where there's a struggling addict trying to find their way through that and how to navigate that. And yeah, we are on spoilers. She does wind up dying to a fentanyl overdose in a scene that I thought was a really good, again, idea on paper, and it just kind of being placed in a really off-kilter, purposefully point in an episode to kind of underline the way that something like fentanyl can just catch someone off guard in a moment where they were not expecting it in any way. And it is a incredibly tragic endpoint that makes sense. Like, it's a huge problem. It makes sense to include that in the show, but I just don't think Sam Levinson's able to weave that into a narrative this long and have it feel like any kind of Payoff seems like a weird way to phrase something like that, but you know what I mean. A crescendo of a character, an ending point of a character. Because this shit is long too. These episodes are really long. The last episode's like 90 minutes or something. Yeah, it might as well be a movie. But barely any of it is very memorable. Or just left me feeling like, okay, so what was like your point with this? You trying to make some kind of greater point about America? You being satirical with this kind of... Early on, Rue goes to this kind of trad Christian family in the middle of nowhere, and that gives her this kind of romanticized dream that she's kind of chasing in her head. But the final shot with the American flag and her narration just felt like, do you think you're being clever with this? Like, yeah, this is all America is at this point. It's crime and debauchery and OnlyFans and overdosing and cynical entertainment industry. Oh, wait. I can get down with that kind of commentary. It just felt like the commentary side of it kind of usurped any of the character work or the character arcs. With, if I go back to the Jacob Elordi character and wrapping it back into this religious symbolism. His death, he winds up being buried alive as like a ticking time bomb. He's got like a tube of air to breathe out of. And he's got like a day's worth of air to convince Cassie to hand over some money or whatever, but in a strange twist of fate, a rattlesnake winds up going down the pipe and biting him to death while he's buried alive. So yeah, the snake symbolism, there's like a burning bush sequence. It's extremely unsubtle and on the nose with that kind of stuff. It was kind of reminding me of like, weirdly, that Alien Earth show and the way that was using symbolism, where it's like, man, I get it, okay? I fucking get it. Can we do something now? One of the major new characters is this villain, Alamo. He's like a crime lord with a strip club and winds up getting Rue working for him. And yeah, that's just reminded me that I don't remember the first 2 seasons having the amount of gross out moments, because I think at least in every episode there's like feces or puke or something gross and disgusting, just kind of for the sake of it. Isn't this depraved? Isn't this messed up? Which is bothersome to me when you have like a character like Jules who might as well have not been in the season. She's relegated into being this sugar baby who, like, I've got nothing to even say about because nothing happens with her. She has a few interactions with Rue and a couple other characters, but we just felt like Levinson didn't know what to do with her at this point. It's kind of weird how, like, every major female character in the show has just kind of been, like, relegated to, like, some kind of sex work. I don't know if he did that on purpose. But one of the more interesting things about the first couple seasons was the amount of these distinct female characters that kind of all stood for something. It's just, what, a commentary on America, and it's like, look what it does to you. Look at the American dream in reality. Turns everybody into a sex worker. Because even like Maddie, who starts off as more of a talent manager, she shifts into being an OnlyFans manager and winds up being Cassie's manager, and she gets dragged into all the crime stuff. It's just like, what was the payoff to any of this? And a lot of the performances are good, and there is something kind of morbidly entertaining about it, but I also wouldn't call it good either. It has certain qualities to it, like some of the opening sequences of episodes are like flashback montages, kind of like the first season, where it will fill in the blanks of a character and give them a backstory. And those are kind of cool and interesting, but it's just so tonally confused and unfocused and so different, which isn't necessarily a bad thing by itself. But it's like, why even give it the same name at that point, outside of like branding and the obvious popularity of the show? Kind of feels like you're missing a season's worth of context that would be in between this and season 2. There's this Bishop character who kind of works under Alamo, and he's kind of a cool character but feels misplaced in this show. He kind of feels like straight out of an anime or something. And when it just kind of starts morphing into this exploitational, almost like Tarantino-esque crime shootout type stuff, it just feels like, what? How did we get here again? What the fuck are we doing? And that goes all the way to the Coleman Domingo character, who I enjoyed all his appearances in the first couple seasons. But again, I'm not sure what they were trying to say with this character, who is kind of devoutly religious until what happens with Rue, where he like abandons his faith, makes a sawed-off shotgun, puts on his old military uniform, and storms Alamo's strip club. It just felt like we don't need this in this show. This is not what this was about. And like I mentioned, Sydney Sweeney's performance being good as Cassie, but what they do with her and the way they portray the OnlyFans stuff is so, oh, this is gonna piss people off kind of energy, with entire set pieces being dedicated to showing off her ass and her boobs and being so over the top and sensationalized with it. It feels like it's undercutting any character at the heart of it, with the priority seeming to be a little bit like The Idol, actually. Levinson's previous season of television. It's like, isn't this extreme? Isn't this so taboo that we're doing this? And predictably, after every episode where something hypersexual with her happened, it would trend all over Twitter and everyone was sharing it like, whoa, does this actually happen in the show? And it just feels cynical. And for all the commentary it's trying to make on like sex workers and OnlyFans and exploitation in general, it's kind of using Sydney Sweeney in the same way that the Alamo character is using and abusing women. It just feels like it's kind of being tone deaf and throwing everything it can out at once to be like, yeah, you can find some meaning here, or like, oh, look at this bit here, this is a cool idea, right? No, but look over here, there's a crazy bit of nudity, or look, she's like doing something extreme. Someone's doing a poo in a toilet. Look, there's a neo-Nazi and people's fingers are being cut off. And it's like, oh my god, what the fuck is this like about? And I guess the last major character that wasn't abandoned is Lexi, who is the plot thread that Sam Levinson likes talking about, like the commentary on the entertainment industry, specifically in California, who's like an assistant to a demanding showrunner on a TV show. And she's kind of positioned as the only sensible one, but she just kind of comes across like a dick. Again, kind of stripped of any complexity and just a one note, oh, I'm judgmental of everybody, okay? There's not really a strong through line with her. She doesn't bounce off any other character in a very interesting way. She's barely in it, to be honest. And like, I've rocketed through these characters because like there's very little to actually break down. With how long that runtime is, it really accomplishes very little. I do really feel like you could make a super cut, strip out all the fat, just make a couple hour long movie or something, or just don't make it at all. There was some mindless entertainment to be found, but at the end of the day, it still felt like Sam Levinsoning his way through this. It was definitely at its best in that first season, which was properly exploring the addiction side and getting a bit more dreamlike and creative with the imagery, which you get little flashes here and there. It's like, oh yeah, that was part of this show once, huh? But yeah, overall just unfocused, a waste. And I think people have figured out that the stripper getting a BBL subplot got more attention and focus than fucking Jules. So, I don't know, I feel like my thoughts are all over the place in the same way the show is. Let me know your thoughts on the way this wrapped up. I feel like out of all the ways you could have made a season this much later, this is one of the corniest, rushed, and untrue to the characters' approach, despite some of the qualities. Oh, and I have to mention the score as well, of course, which very much feeds into how different it feels from those first seasons, with Labyrinth not coming back and Hans Zimmer coming to fill his shoes. And I really thought Hans Zimmer's score was fucking bad. Like, it did not complement it well. It changed the tone so much, trying to make it feel big and cinematic in a way that didn't complement in the same way that the Labyrinth stuff did, which was a big part of its identity. It kind of really made it pop whenever his music would come in, and I know they had some kind of beef. I don't know in detail what exactly happened there, but it goes to show how much a musical identity can be responsible for like a feeling of a show or movie or whatever, and you really feel it when it's absent. So yeah, that's my babble on this last season. Probably never going to think about this ever again. Kind of got too big for its britches at a certain point. Wish it just stayed one season, honestly. And let me know your thoughts. And I'll see you on the next vid. Bye!